I actually flew, and I spent like 3 hours with him, and he was shaking, and he was in tears, and he was blown away by the information that he found. And okay, I think we got him right here. Scott Grissom.
Good morning, Steve. How are you?
Hey, buddy. How are you?
Good.
Let me just give you a quick. We're in Santa Monica right now. We're live, and basically, I've given the audience kind of a rundown on what you did. You actually went to the capsule. You're trying to kind of you wanted to see it. You didn't go there to expect to find any sort of conspiracy theory. Your goal was simply to get a memorial. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. I really kind of felt like NASA and the general public had kind of forgot what my father and Ed White and Roger Chaffee's contribution to the space program and getting those 12 guys to the moon and back safely. The guys that walked on it, there were more than that went, but I just felt like that their contribution was kind of being swept aside and forgotten about, and I kind of wanted to see what it would take to make a suitable memorial for it. Something like Pearl Harbor, or, Gettysburg, the Alamo. Things that aren't exactly the prettiest things in American history, but still very important things.
Let me tell you what we're looking at right now. We're looking at the picture off the website of the capsule, where the guard is standing in front of it and the ablative heat shield is off?
Yes.
Talk about that outward fire that was never brought up in the report. The fire around, is it the ablative heat shield on the inside?
Yes.
That's the picture we're looking at now. Go ahead and describe that picture and what your findings were. We've got a good 15 minutes, so go ahead. We'll go through a bunch of stuff.
Okay. Well, if you read the full accident, the investigative review board, their description of the fire, the only fire that they really talk about is the fire that is inside the pressure vessel. In other words, where my father and Ed and Roger were seated. But as I looked at this spacecraft, I could see that there was a very large fire external of this pressure vessel, which was very curious to me. And I didn't know it at the time. I had to do a lot more research to get to where I am now, but there was a very large fire external of the pressure vessel, but still inside of that ablative heat shield.
Okay, I'm putting my finger around that right now. It kind of looks like it's burned out on the inside. They don't talk about that at all, do they?
No, they don't talk about any of that at all. The closest that they kind of get is they mention an area where the pressure vessel ruptures, because when this fire starts, it's pressurized. My father hits a dump valve, but this dump valve is very, very small. It takes like 90 seconds or 75 seconds. I don't remember the exact number, but it takes something like 75 to 90 seconds for this thing to just relieve a 2 psi differential, which is not very much. So the dump valve is extremely slow, but as this thing burns on the inside, this pressure builds up very rapidly, and it actually explodes at an area down underneath Roger Chaffee's seat at the point when it reaches about 30 to 39 psi. I found different numbers in reviewing all this.
Okay, listen, we're looking at the metal container now where Apollo 1 is stored at Langley.
Right.
Let's talk about when you went in there first of all, this thing is hideous. This is the most unattractive storage unit I've ever seen. Now, when I wrote the article about you, you told me it made your skin crawl and you had to stop and take a breath.
Yeah, I felt pretty queasy for probably, 30 minutes or so, and then after that, you got to be professional about this. Three really brave guys died in there, and
how big would you say that storage container is?
I don't know. I'm going to say it's probably 40 foot long, I'd guess. Probably about 20 foot high, and probably about 20 foot wide.
Okay, now I'm putting up a picture of the AC roll, the switch.
Yes.
This is the picture of that. Now this was basically the first thing that kind of made you realize there was something amiss? You want to? The camera is on the AC roll switch right now.
Okay. Well, what I found was a piece of metal, and I've been around race cars and airplanes and been flying professionally for over 30 years now, and I used to go to the simulator with my father and stuff, and
you fly for FedEx, is that correct, Scott?
That's correct.
Okay.
And I've never seen anything jury rigged like this. I mean, this is a piece of metal that has not got a part number, an engineering drawing, or anything else.
Now, what's the tag on it? What did the tag say?
I think it just says S11 roll switch, I believe.
Right.
S11 switch, I think, is all it's identified as. And at first, I didn't know what S11 was. I wasn't even sure what AC roll was. But see, there's different ways to control this vehicle. I mean, you've got a lot of maneuvers that you have to accomplish to go to and from the moon. And it's basically a flight control switch. It controls the thrusters that are down on the service module, which is really your propulsion system and your life support system for a very long time.
So what is your contention? It's in the wrong it's the wrong way, is it not?
Well, there's no rationale for using this piece of metal to circumnavigate the proper function of that switch. And in doing a lot of research, what I found is that the number 2 pin, there's actually 8 wires that come off of this switch. The number 2 pin is actually rubbed enough to where it makes contact, and that circuit actually stays on even though the switch is off.
I see that. We're going back up to the capsule shot now. I mean, what was the temperature of this fire? Do you remember what the temperature was?
Oh, I'm going to say it was very hot. I mean, it burned very rapidly.
Now, I'm glad you brought that up. Let's talk about. I'm going to switch pictures now. I've got some pictures of you actually. Let's talk about the pulmonary edema. Now, remember, you and I were sitting at the hotel at the Warwick in Houston, and you told me you had spoken to a doctor, and pulmonary edema was supposedly the cause of death, but the report stated that they died in 12 to 15 or 18 seconds, and you said the pulmonary edema, that's not possible. Why don't you give us a story on that?
Okay. What I did was, through the United States Armed Forces, I requested the complete pathology report, my father's autopsy, and I couldn't read or understand a lot of it. When it gave a certain percentage of a heavy metal found in some body tissue, I could kind of understand that, but there was a lot of it I just didn't understand. But I have a friend who is actually the head pathologist for Baylor here in Houston. His name's Tom Wheeler. He's a physician, of course. And I took him to lunch, and I handed him this autopsy, and I let him read it. And he said there was a couple of things about it that were rather suspicious. First of all, it took them about 3 days before they signed this autopsy, from the time that it was completed to the time that the Armed Forces pathologist signed it. So he says that there was probably an issue there someplace about what they were going to do, and he said he had questions about that. But he said more importantly is that pulmonary edema was listed as a secondary cause of death, and that's true for all 3 crew members here. My father, Ed, and Roger all had pulmonary edema listed as a secondary cause of death. He says that's really doesn't support their contention that they died quickly. He says that when you die, your body functions stop. You cannot develop the signs of pulmonary edema unless you continue to live for another 15 to 20 minutes.